Good morning, and thank you all for being here this morning. I probably got the best night's sleep last night I've had in months, and I'm guessing you might not have. So thanks for all your hard work on a late night event for us last night. And that feels like the first day, for me. This is a day I've been waiting for a long time, to be able to get through the procedural processes and steps, and to be able to sort of start doing the job. And having the team together last night before we walked out of this room, we all lined up much like we have right now, and it just felt really good. It just took me back to high school basketball games in the locker room. You kind of have that feel about before the game gets started and whatnot. And I'm just so proud to look down this long line of cabinet members and senior staff, and it just felt good. So I'm excited. I mean, it was a tough speech last night. Tough message to get out. I wrestled with every word. Every line was put in. It was put out. It was this. It was that. It was a critical message to get out to Alaskans. I've always felt Alaskans, they just need to know where we are, and that's really important to me. But part of me I was a little bit frustrated last night because we shouldn't be here. We should not be where we are financially. We should not be here. We are the most energy-rich state. We have all these resources, and I liken it to, families. If a family was starving to death in front of a pantry door full of food, but we just got to open that door. And I feel that's what my job is to open that door and let our resources, be developed responsibly, but in such a way that they're on our terms, that we get the maximum benefit out of it. And I'm not faulting the way it's been done in the past, but I just think we have sat back and made certain assumptions about how things were going to happen, but we're really not at the table. Now I believe we're at the table. And I think we need to be at the table in a positive way, not in a confrontive battle, fight over who gets the last dollar out of the resources, who gets the last fish in the stream. It's how do we put more fish in the stream? How do we get more resources developed on our terms? And so this is what a good night's sleep will do for me. I'm really excited. I really am. I mean, it's hard to be excited after the message I had to deliver last night, but I had to deliver it. And I got to tell you, the education issue is very painful for me. And so that's what motivates me is, okay, here's where we are, here's what we have to do, but my goodness, what an incredible opportunity we have. And we have an opportunity because the team that I put together, I'm very excited about that. Somebody asked me, they look at our team and they said, I'm not sure what you are. And I said, I'll tell you what we are. We're a bunch of Alaskans. That's what we are. That's what our team looks like. It looks like Alaska. So I'm pretty excited about the going forward. It was a bit of a milestone for me last night to sort of. We turned the page. We really did on the next phase of our administration. We announced today we'll be putting out something on a Commissioner of Department of Transportation, Mark Lucan, will be announced today as our Commissioner of Transportation. And so we pretty much got the table set. We have got one more to go, and we'll have an absolute complete team. So I'm ready for questions. And any of the tough questions, I've got all the people here that can answer all the tough questions. But Becky.
Governor Becky Bull with the Associated Press. If we could talk about two areas in your speech last night. One was on privatization of services. What specific services did you have in mind when you were talking about that? And the other was where you said you would ask the Revenue Commissioner to explore ways to safely put the state's wealth to work. What exactly are you talking about with that?
Okay. The first one I'll answer. The second one, Commissioner of Revenue will answer. I don't have a specific target on privatization. I just think that's a concept that we need to have. We need to be aware of as we do business, because there are times that it may be much more efficient to do some things on a private basis. More the exception than the rule, but it's not something I'm going to rule out. I was asked that a number of times in the past. Would I consider that? And I will consider that. I come from the private sector. So I'm gonna. It's not a mission I have to go in and privatize as much as we can, but that'll be an option on the table as we look at efficiencies. If there's another option, do it on privatization. I'll certainly consider that. I just think that's part of my responsibility. And can you hang on the side of the second, Pat? The second question, Randy, if you could answer that. Sorry, Pat. I try to answer them all in order.
And just for information, Randy Hoffbeck, Commissioner of Revenue. There's several things that are being explored. One of the things that is obvious in looking at the state's revenue picture is that debt is largely underutilized as a tool, not as a way to kick expenses down the road, but as a way to take opportunities to fund things in a timely fashion, particularly in light of the market right now and the low cost of borrowing and our ability to collateralize debt very easily because of the wealth that stands behind the debt. Another thing we're looking at is re-looking at our investment strategies, how we're managing some of our funds to look at whether we're actually have enough debt in mid and long-term investments versus tying too much up in short-term investments that have very low rates of return. So we're actually looking at the complete structure of what our cash flow looks like to make sure that we've got that balanced correctly. And then we're looking at some other things that are really very speculative and kind of out there, but we're taking a look at, and that's looking at whether there's any arbitrage opportunities in the market right now with the large play and get a direct return on our money without locking up any of the money itself, borrowing against it and then selling it back into another market or reinvesting in a fashion that we get a safe return without risking the underlying assets. So those are some of the things in play.
For people unfamiliar, arbitrage?
Arbitrage is basically taking, you're selling debt and buying some investment. On a true arbitrage, it would be an instantaneous reinvestment, so there'd be no market structure that could come into play that might be unexpected. But if it's not a true arbitrage, there's opportunity to just take money, borrow against your assets, reinvest them in safe returns that could generate revenue over time. Now, those are very speculative. We've got several people looking into it because it would have to be safe. We are not going to risk the state's investment. But we do have an opportunity with a lot of wealth, and the fact that as a sovereign we don't pay tax, that there may be some arbitrage opportunities available to us.
What would the purpose of that be? Like, what would you be using that money for if some of those things were done?
The arbitrage or the capital? Or the debt. For debt itself would be largely capital related. Mm-hmm. The arbitrage play could be used for operational, generate funds for operations.
Like on a short-term basis?
It could be long-term, depending upon how it would be structured. And again, it's very, very speculative, but it's just one of those things that we're looking at as a possibility. And we're taking in, any ideas that people are throwing at us, and we're working on them to see if there's a potential there. So that's obviously nothing that's in play, but those are the kind of things that the governor's asked us to look at, and we're looking at. So.
And when you're talking about that, are you talking about what are the pools of money that you're sort of considering as sources for those ideas?
Again, very speculative.
Yeah.
There's opportunities with the euro dollar where the markets are actually getting negative returns on debt, so that and then bringing it back and reinvesting in U.S. Treasuries or something where you've got a positive return. The issue is whether there's enough of a delta in there to cover the costs, and there's been others where they've talked about actually reinvesting the money in hard assets that would be a return. I mean, again, it's all speculative, and so this is thinking out loud. But that's the kind of free thinking that we're asking people to do right now, and that may very well not go anywhere. But I like the fact that people are thinking outside the box.
Could that risk for example, the permanent fund's tax-free status if Alaska's trying to arbitrage its money?
No.
And are you talking about, is that sort of where the money would come from, like the permanent fund, or is it the saving, like the other savings?
Let me just kind of, because we're not that far along in the process. Okay, it's an idea, and I just floated out there just to show the kind of unique ideas that we're looking at.
You know, to explain this to people, the average person, to understand it, how could you put it in terms like maybe refinancing your house and being able to leverage that money? I mean, what's a basic way to put it so people might understand that concept?
I guess the idea would be if you have, say you're a homeowner or a person, and you've got a home, and you have no income, and you've got expenses that you need to pay, and you have an opportunity, you either cash in your retirement account or you take a mortgage out against your house. The idea of arbitrage would be taking out the mortgage against your house versus cashing in your retirement account. So you'd be looking to leverage what you own to generate money that you need to survive. And arbitrage is much more complicated than that, but that's the kind of the concept behind it. Again, it's just a free thought that's out there. So.
Thanks, Randy. Pat.
The question I had was, Pat Forney, Alaska Dispatches. Question I had was, would you look at the reverse to privatization? I understand state's money managers are paying tens of millions of dollars in fees. And they say they could do more in-house.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to add as state employees do that in-house?
Absolutely. I will look at both sides of the options that way. You're absolutely correct. There are some things that we pay dearly for that perhaps could be done much more efficiently, economically in-house. So there's no bar to that at all. And in fact, we may end up doing more than that than on the other side. But it just all options are on the table. Whichever one makes most sense economically going forward, that's one we use. Yeah.
Jennifer Canfield, Alaska Budget Report. Senate Finance Committee hired two of the state's recently former commissioners yesterday. One of those, Bill Sturr, former Hess commissioner. They hired him to help them with the Medicaid budget, but also with the expansion issue. Mr. Sturr obviously wasn't eager about Medicaid expansion. Do you see that as an affront to the efforts you're making with hiring Valerie Davidson and looking towards expanding Medicaid?
Well, first let me say I'm glad they hired a local. I think that's a good thing. That's a big issue for me, local hire. So I applaud that. And I don't at all. I mean, I think it's good that we're going to have both viewpoints on up for discussion. I think that's how you make the best decision. So I'm not, and to their credit, they gave me a heads up that they were going to do that beforehand some weeks ago, and I appreciated that. That's the kind of dialogue or communication I like to have with the legislature. So I don't see that as an affront at all.
Are you anticipating any additional pushback now that they've got someone on working for them that's obviously not for what you're trying to do?
I just don't look at it that way. I just think they're gonna present the facts as they see them, and they'll get the reports that they request, and we'll let the process move forward. So I wasn't troubled by that at all.
Yeah, Matt Buxton, Fairbanks Daily News Matter. Following up on that, yesterday when they were closing out the committee, I believe it was Senator Olson asked if they would keep Sturr on for a special session in the event that a fight over Medicaid, it basically sends us into extra hours. I guess, would you be prepared to, if lawmakers really want to put up a fight about Medicaid expansion, would you be ready to go into extra hours for it?
It's probably a little early to make that prediction or determination. I feel very strongly about health care in Alaska. So I guess I think I've made that clear. I don't think I've made a presentation, a speech, or any comments anywhere without bringing that up. It's a very, very high priority. So, but it's probably too soon to second guess what we would do in the event we needed a special session on that. So, but it's a very high priority of mine, man.
Shauna Crondall, Alaska Education Update. I have a question for Commissioner Hanley, if
Okay.
Or I could wait if.
Why don't you ask me
wanna.
the question, then we'll.
Okay, after the Senate Finance hearing this morning, Director Pitney said you may look at combining some education things like ACPE and the university, career technical training, high schools, to make education more efficient and to decrease administrative costs. And I'm just wondering where that is in the process, if you have any details on that.
Yeah, I don't have any details. Maybe Commissioner Hanley has some details on that.
Thank you, Governor. For the record, Mike Hanley, the Commissioner for the Department of Education. There are some natural places that we can provide efficiencies and effectiveness for our kids, primarily connections that we have between the Department of Education and the Department of Labor. Our goal is to connect our students to the workforce here in Alaska, and I greatly appreciate the skill set and the resources that Commissioner Dragas brings to the table. We've got our first meeting set up for next week to determine how we can bring those resources to our students, and then how our students can provide their resources, their skills to our employers. So that's one of the natural places. ACPE is already a part of the Department of Education. They are operated under a separate board, but we work closely with them. We focus primarily on the K-12 system, and they help us make that connection to the post-secondary situation and scenario. Largely through financing loans, they operate the performance scholarship and do that.
Alexandra Gutierrez, APRN. Changing gears to your new Transportation Commissioner. Commissioner Lucan served under the Parnell administration, and then he resigned without explaining why he was leaving the department. Can you kind of just talk a little bit about where your vision matches up with his, and what it took to bring him out of retirement on this front?
Well, I have followed him a bit. I kind of know some of the things that he was looking at doing in the department previously. I see what he's done in his private life, his military background. He brings he has a somewhat of a shared vision I have as far as what can be done within Department of Transportation. I think there's some more efficiencies that we can do things differently than they've been done over the past. It's really sort of it's a huge organization. You've got the air part, you've got the water, you got the marine highway system, you got the road system, you got the airport. So it's a big organization, and I think I liked his vision in the past and of how to sort of deal with things a bit differently. And when he's on board, I'm sure he will add more specifics to that. But he's sort of a I like people with a plan, and I think he had a vision, a plan for that, and I like that. So I think he's also like to work a little more efficiently. I kind of come from that world as far as I have a hard time throwing things away that I can fix, and most of my vehicle has well over 100,000 miles on them, and some of them look pretty darn rugged, but I still hang on to them. So.
And just to follow up on that, are you both in alignment in terms of the road projects that are currently on hold, Juneau Access, Connecticut Bridge, and treatment of the ferry system? We
are. I mean, we are. We want to take a look at them all, and we don't want to be, spending money we don't need to spend while we're looking at them. So we are eye to eye on looking at all projects and making sure it makes sense to go forward. So. Rhonda.
Rhonda McBride, KTDA. Last night, when the Senate majority leaders and House majority leaders were reacting to your speech, Steve Thompson raised concerns about the gas line. They said that they've laid out a plan, it's in progress, and what they're most worried about is whether you're going to follow through with that.
The license plates on my vehicle say AK LNG. That's been my license plate for a long time. I've been involved in this effort for a long time. I will not start over. I will take the good work they have done, and I will continue it. If anything, I'm going to accelerate it and move it on a much faster. You have no idea how hard it was for me to say revenues in 2023. My goodness, that was a hard one for me to say, because that's it. We should be having revenues from that project today. We should have had them 5 years ago, but we wouldn't be in this situation. So, no, I will not start over again. You know, I've been advised that land has been purchased in Nikiski for an LNG terminal. You know, they're doing work on a line to Nikiski. I'm fine with that. The destination I'm focused on is Asia. My destination I focus on is the marketplace. So what location it goes to get there, as long as it's the one that can be, permitted, expeditiously and done safely. They have selected Nikiski. Fine. I'm very comfortable with that. So I will be. What I'm not sure of is that can we afford to do two parallel projects side by side? Does it make more sense to combine our efforts and take the synergies from two, put them into one, and move quicker? That's my only unknown about this. I will not start over again. I will not begin from scratch. They have done good work. The AGDC structure is good, and so no, there won't be.
Just a quick follow-up question is, I guess that's the other thing we want to know about is the ASAP line. Is it in or out?
Well, and that's the AGDC, and that's what that's the one that I think we need to advance one project, combine one project, and in order to afford to be able to, be making education cuts here and other things we need to do. Can we really afford the luxury of having two parallel projects? Does it not make more sense to combine the two? And I'll look at a way of doing that. If we can't, then we can't. But I'm certainly going to take a look at that. I have to, because both of them are relatively expensive. We absolutely need the end product and the result, but we need it sooner than the time frame that currently is set. So.
One more question from here, and then we have to take calls online.
Will you go to a special session then, you think, this year?
I don't plan to go to overtime on anything.
No, I'm talking about just for the gas line.
If it was necessary and the legislature wanted it and made sense to do that to move things along, I'd certainly consider that. You bet. And there's been a fair amount of speculation about that long before I came into office that perhaps the deal will be made. It requires a special session. If it does, it does. I mean, I have no problem with that.
It looks like you cut all the funding for Alaska Aerospace Corporation. What was your thinking in that?
My thinking is I'm not sure we can afford to be in the aerospace business. So there's been discussion about selling that for quite some time, and we've been listening to that. And so maybe there's a process. I mean, I know that there's some upcoming meetings talking about the potential of selling that to the private sector. $21.5 million is certainly money that's a big number, whatnot. So. I like the space technology. I like all that, but we're in tough times right now.
Point Thompson, are you know work hard to get that developed?
It's being developed, and I've had some good meetings with an Exxon team. Gave me a briefing a couple days ago on their progress, what they're doing up there. Now that we're sort of past at this stage, we're going to sneak off for a couple days and go up there to Point Thompson and to Chaputo Bay and sort of spend a couple days at Dead Horse and go out from there to the different fields, to Alpine, etc. So I'm very excited about. I'm pretty much a hands-on, boots-on-the-ground kind of person. So I'm anxious to spend a few days up there and go to each of the facilities. Point Thompson is one.
I have another Steve Thompson question. He made a comment in last night's press conference after your speech that you had made a comment that if the oil price didn't go up next year, that discussions of, I think, traditional revenue options would have to be on the table. He said he didn't think that was necessarily soon enough, that those discussions may have to start this year, because by the time you get to next year, if the oil price doesn't go up, to get that machinery in place, it might be too late. I'm just curious, I mean, do you have a response to that? Are you open to those discussions this year?
Those discussions could take place. I think that it's no secret. We certainly we have to have that discussion internally. We just think from a timing standpoint, we're not there yet, and I don't know that Alaskans are ready for that discussion when we need to get sort of our internal house in order, so to speak. So I think they're looking for us to make some adjustments first, and then if necessary to have that discussion, we'll have that. secondarily. You know, it's certainly, you know, he could bring it up this year, and it's certainly his option, and I have no issue with that at all. We're focusing now on the other side of the column, on the spending side.
So you think Alaskans have to see school cuts before they'll accept taxes?
You know, I think Alaskans want to see us do our work first, and do the hard work, and do the heavy lifting on the spending side before that's going to be more palatable to them, I think. So, Becky.
Just in terms of the timeline, you know, my understanding from the Senate Finance meeting today was even with the cuts you're proposing, we're still going to have a pretty big drop from savings. And you know, I'm wondering how over how many years you envision cuts, and if those need to be accelerated, and how long do you think these institutional changes that you're talking about will take, and if you expect those to happen before 17 or 18, when potentially we could run out of reserves?
You know, it's going to almost be on a case-by-case basis, a year-by-year basis, as far as it, you know, because we are driven so much by the price of oil. But you know, we've talked about, you know, as I said last night, you know, what would it look like in 4 years with a total of 25% reduction. We can't balance our budget totally by cuts, obviously, and we just can't. We can't do that and survive as a state. So that's not really the goal. But so looking out, how far is it going to be? It comes down to a question of what's the glide slope that we're going to be on, and it's going to be on a glide slope. We want to make sure it's a glide slope that results in a safe landing, and for Alaska and for Alaska's future. So we are looking at this on a long-term basis. Every day that, I mean, I look at it from this standpoint. Every 3 or 4 days we could have built a new school. And that's what we're doing at $10 million a day that we draw down on our savings. I look at what could we have done since yesterday to today in the way of infrastructure, and so that's the part that haunts me and caused me to take some pretty strong steps on the financial side, because I don't like drawing down our savings at $10 million a day. It just, you know, how many miles of road could we have built? You know, so that's the dilemma for me, is living off our savings. Is very uncomfortable for me and for the future of the state. So we need to take some steps to recognize that's not acceptable. And you know, some have, you know, are concerned about how graphic I was in the financial situation that we're in. But I think Alaskans need to know what a dire situation that we're in. And when I'm in Washington D.C., I am not bashful at all of expressing where we are financially as a state, and to those that have the ability and control of determining what we can do with our resources. So it's something we have to be bold about. We have to, you know, we can't. I don't think we can soften that message at all. It's got to be what it is. So.
The 20. How serious is that 25% cut? I mean, that gets us into the range of the Goldsmith report, that $4.5 billion sustainable budget. Is that a goal that you have for this these 4 years?
I think it's. I wouldn't say it's a goal, because it's one of those unpleasant goals necessarily, but it's one that it's something we have to take a look at. We have to sort of look. We have to model all scenarios, I think, and at some point, I mean, you can't model them all, but we want what would it look like if we had that kind of a reduction in 4 years. And it's not to send out any sort of a, you know, sound of an alarm necessarily, but it just, I think we fiscally have to look at all options. So.
With King Abdullah dying yesterday, do you have hope that OPEC will cut production and prices will go back up?
I always hope that prices will go back up. That's sort of a morning ritual I have. So, so I don't want it to be as a result of any dire circumstances or situations at all. But we need the price of oil to rise back up again. And you know, we've seen this in the past, and we know that it will make an adjustment up. I guess the biggest unknown is when. So we live in a different world than we did before. The volume of oil through technology it's a different play. Typically, OPEC in the situations have turned the valve to the right. This time they've turned it to the left. And when we're sort of the collateral damage as a result of what's going on worldwide.
Governor, would you like to take calls?
I would. Thank you. Thanks, Grace.
Operator, we're ready for
first question comes from the line of Elwood Bremer with Alaska Journal of Commerce. You may proceed with your question.
Hello, Governor. Elwood with the Journal of Commerce here, as the gentleman said. You mentioned that projects similar to Red Dog would be something you'd like to see the state invest in. One of those projects would potentially be the Ambler Road. Why cut or put the project on hold, given that data says it'll only need $6.8 million over the next several fiscal years to move it forward through the EIS process?
Yeah, that's one that, again, that's one of the reasons we put them all on hold, look at those that make sense going forward. Are there companies that are willing to step up today to say we'll pay for that and be a participant and a user of that road and participate financially? That's what we're looking for. To take it through another stage of permitting, is there someone who wants to come in and is there a company who wants to come in and take over that permitting process and take the work that we've done to date and continue that process? So that's the kind of discussion that we will have, and because the Red Dog road was tied to the Red Dog mine that was already, they have an annual payment to the state on that road. So are there companies willing to step up and do that? We are anxious to talk to companies that want to develop our resources based upon their commitment to participate. It's not going to be a situation we can no longer afford to build it and hope they come. Build it and hope that they use it, hope that they ship on it. We have to have those folks at the table. And I'm very serious about that opportunity. I think it makes a lot of sense to be involved in that piece of it, but it has to be tied to projects that are ready to sign up and be a participant.
Okay, well, Nova Copper is working on a feasibility study for a mine in the Ambler district right now. Have you been in discussions with Nova Copper?
I have not personally at as of this morning, but I'm sure we will. I look forward to that.
Okay, and last, is the $150 million capital budget a hard cap for you, or is there a certain allowance that you've given the legislature, as typically happens?
It's not a cap. It took a while for me to get there, though. We were at 106, and some people were able to pull me up to 150. So I guess nothing's in concrete at this point, but they pulled me up from 106. I'll put it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Operator, next question, please.
The next question comes from the line of Josh Campbell with CKRW Whitehorse. You may proceed with your question.
Good afternoon, Governor Walker. I just putting in our first initial call just to, I guess, belated congratulations, but this is all budget talk mostly. Any hint of movement on how's the relationship going, I guess, first with the Territory Yukon, and secondly, is there any movement on hydro developments or communications work in the southeast corner of Alaska?
The first question, my relationship with who? Oh, yes, yes. We've had a number of communications with the leadership in the Yukon, and some initial calls after I was sworn in, and so I'm looking forward to an opportunity to engage with them more directly. We have a lot of common interests and common goals, so I'm looking forward to that. I like hydro projects. I think I love the cost of the source of fuel for hydro. I like that the example I typically use is Kodiak. They've got I think 98% on a combination of hydro and wind, and 2% on diesel, and I like that. There has to be and I know there's some opportunities with some interties for excess power towards the Yukon and vice versa. So I'm as long as the project makes economic sense. I like what they've done in the Blue Lake project in Sitka, where a combination of the local, the city of Sitka, and the state participated jointly in that funding project. So those are good long-term projects. I like communities looking at that way from the cost of energy.
Is just one last quick question. The Alaska Highway, the LCAN, I understand from reading your bio you got family ties to that historic project, but is that any part of, I guess, economic stimulus that you're seeing for the state government, or is it more of a federal priority, highways? Do you see any possible projects coming out of that? It's always a big thing, you know, keeping the highway in passable condition.
Yes, well, thank you for my, yes, my mother did, was involved in the building of that highway. You know, there's a particular section between Beaver Creek, I think, and Haines, this Shack, Rack, thank you, Chacwack, thank you. That really needs to be, it's pretty tough. And so we pay attention to that because a lot of our commerce, a lot of our residents use that, a lot of our visiting tourists use that that highway system. So we have paid clear attention to that. I've had a number of calls in the last few years from groups that are looking at bringing rail to the border, wanting to know if we would meet them at the border with our rail system. I know that Governor Murkowski had done a fair amount of work on that concept. So that's something that would be an interesting opportunity for Alaska for a number of different reasons on a different mode of transportation. So that's something that I expect to hear more from the from our Yukon counterparts on that potential.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Operator, next question, please.
We have a follow-up question from the line of Elwood Bremer with Alaska Journal of Commerce. You may proceed with your question.
Governor, in getting to the budget cuts that you outlined last night, as public employee contracts come up, are you going to look to the unions for concessions at all? Public employee salaries have increased quite a bit over the past few years.
You know, I think actually that won't be my decision. It'll be my Commissioner of Administration will be involved in that more than I, obviously.
Yeah.
We're first going to look for efficiencies. Now, how can we do things more efficient? What are we doing that perhaps we don't need to be doing? We'll start down that path first. I really am not focused, and it's not certainly not my first choice to try to balance the budgets on the backs of the working folks for you know that work for us. That's one of the last things I think we'll look towards. So we're going to do a lot of work before we get to that point, but we may have to get there. I can't stand here and say today that nothing is off the table. There's no when we start talking about cutting education, that's a tough one for me. By the time we get there, you know, everything is on the table. But it'll be an order of priority for me. We're not going to start with that. We're going to look at a lot of other things before we get to that.
Okay, thank you.
Operator, how many more calls in the queue?
There are no further questions over the telephone lines at this time.
Thank you.
Very good.
Kind of a follow-up question then. Do you see any changes in the Prince Rupert Ferry Terminal plan? Might you decide you're going to ask for the Buy America provisions to be waived?
We're still looking at that. That's a tough one for me. I think the Buy American provision is in there for a good reason. We're making improvements to their facility. We're on a 50-year lease with them. So we're still in discussions on that, and there still may be a path forward. I have met with the Secretary of Transportation, Fox, about that some weeks ago, and it's a project that's 91% federally funded, 9% state funded. So we're working. I mean, they're still having discussions about that, about if there's a way forward to deal with that improvement. I'm all about local hire and all about buy local, and so it's a little bit awkward situation for me. But I don't want to be obstructionist in getting an improvement to the ferry terminal either. So we're having some fairly high level discussions on that.
Can that money be redirected elsewhere in Alaska?
I don't think it can. I asked that as well. I don't think it can, and if it needs to be done, it's a terminal that it's an old terminal. It's wood. The pilings need to be replaced and need to be upgraded. And so, and it's an important part of what we do as far as our Alaska Marine Highway System. So we'll continue to have that discussion, and I'm sure we'll come to some sort of understanding so the project can move forward.